In the New Testament, there are two great images and events of the Last Judgment. The first is in the Gospel of Matthew, in which he separates the sheep from the goats, those on his right and those on his left. And the judgment is done according to how they responded to Christ himself and his needs in the needs of his little ones. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was naked and you didn't clothe me. I was sick and in prison and you didn't visit me. And one side is taken off to their eternal reward, while the other is taken to eternal damnation. Now in the book of Revelation, with the victory of the King of Kings and the reign of 1,000 years, in which the dragon and the two beasts have now been confined to the burning pool of sulfur, the last judgment takes place, in which John sees a great white throne of judgment. And this is an image and a scene of universal judgment of those who did not take part in the first resurrection. Those who did not die for the faith now rise and are judged. And there are two concepts of judgment in this scene. One is from the book of life, and the other is from the heavenly record of deeds, or the scrolls of deeds. With the book of life, we see implied that some are directly called to receive a special revelation. And in receiving that special revelation, they either respond to it or they deny it, because there are names specifically written in the book of life. Those who are active citizens in the kingdom of God find themselves written in the book of life. And this harkens back to the message to the church in Sardis earlier on in the book of Revelation, in which the victor's name will never be erased from the book of life. And John is giving the message of Jesus to the church in Sardis. So they have heard this revelation, have heard this gospel, and those who do not reject it will never have their name erased from the book of life. So this is a select group. Now, does this imply that there is no free will? If you're in the book of life, you're automatically saved? And not necessarily, because as the letter to Sardis does imply, one's name can be erased from the book of life, and the victor's name will never be erased from the book of life. So free will is still a part of the salvation of those, even those who receive that specific revelation, those who hear and are called to respond or deny the gospel of Christ. With the heavenly record of deeds, we see a set of scrolls along with a single scroll, that's the book of life, but the set of scrolls, plural, is considered the heavenly record of deeds because it says those are judged according to their deeds as written on the scrolls. So it links deeds and salvation. Here again we see that link that the scriptures provide between deeds and salvation. We hear also echoed that earlier beatitude, "Blessed are those who die in the Lord, let them rest from their labors, for their good deeds go with them." So we hear a reference to good deeds, and now there's a judgment based on them. And this, however, includes all those who are to be judged. It implies a much more universal inclusion in the judgment of God. But in this case, God does not judge. Rather, human beings, by their actions, write their own judgment. And we see them being judged accordingly on how they lived, their good deeds. So while the book of life is a specific group, the heavenly record of deeds on the scrolls implies a much more universal judgment of those who share in the second resurrection. But at the end of it all, we see death and Hades, the realm of death, the netherworld, being taken up, and now they are thrown into the fiery pool of burning sulfur. And this, of course, again, is reminiscent of the words of St. Paul. The last enemy to be destroyed is death. And here we see death and the netherworld being disposed of, because there is no place for them in the new creation that is brought about by Christ and his salvation.